Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the U.S. and around the world. September is National Suicide Prevention Month. Last week, psychiatrist Dr. Joshua Weiner talked about the rise in the numbers of suicide, and today he joins us to talk more about suicide and what to do if someone you love is having thoughts of suicide. Thanks for being here. A very important subject. So do you have any idea the numbers of people who have suicidal thoughts, teens and adults?
We do. The government has done some large studies. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. So we have some idea of these numbers. So when it comes to adults, 18 and older, roughly 4% of adults in a given year will say that they've had thoughts of suicide. Of those, 13% will go on to make a suicide attempt during the course of the year. When it comes to teens and those in high school, the numbers are different. There, it's about 18 to 20% in a given year who will report having had suicidal thoughts. And of those, about 50% of them, or 8% of teens overall, will end up making a suicide attempt in a given year. These are massive, massive numbers. And for teens, about 2% of teens overall will end up making a suicide attempt that was serious enough that it landed them in the hospital and needing medical treatment. So this is really unbelievable, I think.
Really, and those numbers are, as you mentioned, very large and very alarming. So now that we have these numbers, what about those people who have suicidal thoughts or suicidal attempts? How many of those actually seek help then?
You know, this is what the scary thing is, too. We know that people in general who are suffering with mental illness, often the vast majority never seek any kind of help. They just go at it alone. They try to pull themselves up from their bootstraps, or they're afraid to do it because they are afraid of the stigma associated with it. There are multiple reasons. Access to care is a real problem. But even for those people out there who are having suicidal thoughts, the vast minority will get help. So the majority of people out there, even who are thinking of suicide, are not seeking any help at all, and that has to change.
It does. And what can we do as a community if you know somebody, a loved one, a friend, someone, a neighbor, and you know that he or she is having suicidal thoughts? What can you do to help? How do you handle a situation? It's so delicate.
They're so delicate, but I have a couple things that I think are good ideas for people to do. First off, don't be afraid to talk to that person about their suicidal thoughts. Talking to them about it is not going to increase the likelihood that they're going to act on it. If anything, studies have shown the opposite. You're going to decrease the likelihood. Your goal is not to try to convince that person that their thoughts of suicide are a huge mistake. Don't say, oh, you can't do that. You have children. You have people who love you. Please don't do that. I think there's a time for that, but that shouldn't be what you do originally. What you want to do is you want to understand. You want to make sure that that person believes that they're being heard and understood. You do want to ask a couple specific questions. You want to ask them, do you have a plan? There's a big difference in the likelihood of somebody eventually going to make a suicide attempt if they're having what we call passive suicidal thoughts, like, well, I just kind of wish I wasn't here. I sometimes kind of think maybe I could run my car off the road, versus, you know, I have had a plan. I've been stockpiling medication, or I went out and I purchased a gun, etc. That changes it to a whole nother level. And you want to find out, have they ever made a suicide attempt in the past? Because that is the biggest sole predictor of them making a future suicide attempt.
And what do you do quickly if that person refuses to seek help?
This is a huge problem. It's very hard even for professionals like me to know what to do. What you want to do, you want to beg, you want to plead for that person to get some help. You want to say, I'll help you make an appointment with somebody. I'll even go to the appointment with you if that'll make it easier. If they're refusing that and you're imminently concerned, you call 911 and you ask for a mobile mental health crisis unit. They have them all over. They'll send somebody out. These people are professionals. They'll evaluate the person and make a determination as to what next steps need to be taken.
This could be life-saving information. Dr. Joshua Weiner, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.